Ladies and gentlemen, Kuro Games has come out with a lot of news regarding a specific unit, and that unit is Qiuyuan. And I have some news as well to share with you. My voice is a little bit shot. I sound a little bit sick, and that's because I had a little bit too much fun on my vacation, sang a little bit too much karaoke, and caught diseases from literally, like, foreigners. I mean that in like there were people that came from like Europe and they brought diseases with them, and it just happened like that. Anyways, we've got a lot of material for us to cover. We're gonna have a bunch of different intros regarding probably explaining the situation, because I know I don't sound that good right now. So with that in mind, we're gonna be taking a look at Qiuyuan's kit. But before we do that, we gotta take a look at this combat showcase, because this came out quite a while ago and I have been kind of slacking on reacting to this. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right on into it. Was this like necessary for the plot? I'm just wondering. As far as I'm concerned, combat showcases are like, they usually transition from like the 2D into like the 3D animations. And I'm pretty sure he has a shirt on in game. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he has a shirt on in game. That's actually crazy. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. This guy is this guy is like female gooner bait. Bro's just like aura farming under a waterfall. There's a lore reason? Oh, okay. I'm excited to find out what the lore reason for this gooner bait is. Let's see it. Oh, damn. Bro's getting assassinated. Wait, what the hell? Oh, you know what? The lore reason is that he can immediately clothe himself within like 2 seconds. That's crazy.
The blade is hold to strike. Make your move. Surrender. Off with you. Winds howling.
Let's play this back again. That's a pretty sick intro screen. I think they did a great job with this one. What I'm a little bit concerned by, though, is why is he fighting Fraxidus people? When he just got ganked by a bunch of, like, I'm not gonna lie, these guys look like they're from Jinzhou. Why is he suddenly fighting Fraxidus people in, like, the next frame?
Surrender. Off with you. Winds howling. Next.
I like that they showed off the parry move that he can do.
Too slow. Stars realigned.
They're really showcasing the drinking a lot here. They're really showcasing the drinking a lot. I think this character is made for alcoholics.
Break like bamboo. Fall.
Yeah, it's medicine.
Vanish.
I think the flute in the middle of the animations has to be... That is genuinely aura farming. I don't think that there's any way you can show this and say that this isn't at least... This is 1,000,000% Yasuo over here. If you don't see that or you don't agree with that, I'm just gonna call you a damn liar. He's a lot of references in one character. Oh, that's sick. Oh. I don't know. That might be one of the coldest tacit mark reveals that I've seen in a trailer or a demo to date. I'm gonna be honest. That might be one of the coldest ones. That's pretty badass. I'm gonna be real. Oh boy. It's, I don't know. They're kind of outdoing themselves each time. We went from like an upward view of the, like, we transitioned, right? From like the bamboo, we start looking up. Then we see the moon, and then like the moon turns into like a tapestry, and then a drop of ink falls on the moon like water, and then I don't even know what the fuck that was, and now we have the
mandate.
I don't know. That was I'm sorry. That was probably, that's maybe the coolest one that they've done. I thought Yuno's was amazing, but then this one also just looked badass too. That's what the true power creep is here. How is each combat showcase moving forward gonna make the tacit mark reveal look more badass than the previous one? Because it seems like it has just been getting better every release.
Mandate calls. judgment falls.
Ooh. Okay. And people said watch till the end. Oh, this has to be from a showcase. Oh. Oh.
You traitor.
That was a little bit interesting. Anyways, now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get on with the real focus of today's video, and that is going to be the Qiuyuan kit reveal. It is a little bit late, I do understand that. Wish we could have gotten it out earlier. And the thing is, Qiuyuan's kit is a little bit interesting as a reveal, because one thing that Kuro did that they haven't done for any other release is that they've actually gone ahead and not allowed you to see him in the Crossing Stars menu. We've typically always been able to see the second half character every single time the version is launched. Like last update, we were able to see Yuno. When Cartithia released, we were able to see Lupa. When Zani released, we were able to see Chakota. But Kuro's been keeping Qiuyuan's kit kind of under the wraps, even though we did get a chance to see it in-game when you got to play him during the 2.7 quest. And so what I wanted to do was see, all right, with the official reveal, have there actually been any buffs? Have there been any changes compared to what we've seen before? And that's the question that we're going to be answering today. So without further ado, let's just go ahead. Let's get right on into it. So for Qiuyuan over here, he's got a nice little quote. I'm not going to read it out loud because my voice is dying. Let's just take a look at some of the baseline information for him. He's going to be an arrow sword user that's going to level up using the Fenrico boss mat. He's also going to be using wintry bells, which are a Jinjo material for his ascension. And then he's also going to be using the Curse of the Abyss, the new Thermodian Fleur-de-Lis boss mat for his weekly boss mats. So hopefully you were farming this. I know Sunday's already passed. Big L if you did it and you were trying to level him up. When it comes to his combat roles, what he specializes in, he's going to have Concerto efficiency, he's going to deal heavy attack damage, and he's also going to have echo skill damage amplification and be able to cast multiple echo skills. That means Law of Harmony users and Fenrico farmers. This is the guy to be dedicating all those resources towards. Now let's go ahead, let's start moving on. Let's take a look at the normal attack. And before we do, though, a bit of a disclaimer that I have to give when it comes to Kuro and their kit reveals. They typically start off with a bit more of a condensed version, a simplified version, and then they give you more of a detailed breakdown later on. We'll be making sure to look at both just so that we get the full information. You'll understand why. Because this is the normal attack, right? And that's what the skill description. Basic attack, deal arrow damage. Heavy attack, deal arrow damage. Mid-air attack, deal arrow damage, and dodge counter. You guessed it, it deals arrow damage. So not too much that we can necessarily decipher from this one. We'll just keep in mind that this will be expanded on later on. Anyways, moving on to the resonance skill, we're going to see something very, very, very familiar. It's going to have one cast that deals arrow damage, but then it's going to have a second cast over here that you'll see, and this is where he starts doing the bamboo jumping. And basically, you hold down the resonance skill to dash forward a distance. You'll deal arrow damage if you meet them, but if there are no targets nearby, he's just going to leap up and start dashing on bamboo for a distance by continually consuming his stamina until it runs out. And then he can release the resonance skill to immediately end the dash and land, and if there are enemies around him, you'll deal damage to them. So yeah, that's basically where that whole sort of like wall running, bamboo running mechanic is going to come from. It's not from like a sprint, it's from holding down his resonance skill. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now let's move on forward and take a look at the resonance liberation. That's going to be called Sundering Strike. And this is going to deal arrow damage, but perhaps most importantly, it's also going to give a buff to the team. It's going to increase the crit damage of every nearby active resonator, basically the on-field character on your team, by up to 30%, with 2% given for each 1% crit rate above 50. So all you really need is 65% crit rate to be able to max out this buff. And this is actually quite comparable to some of the, this is actually why I had Rosia pulled up earlier. This is actually comparable to Rosia's Liberation, where she can buff the team's attack based off of her additional crit rate over 50%. But the thing is, Rosia needs 70% crit rate to be able to max out her buff over here, which is a little bit interesting, right? When Qiuyuan kind of has, as far as I'm concerned, way looser requirements for kind of a bigger buff. So maybe some people could consider this power creep. I'm not necessarily sure. It is a different stat after all. But yeah, it's an easier buff to max out. It's a bigger buff than, I think, 200 attack in most scenarios, 30% crit damage. And yeah, it just seems like altogether a bit of a better ability. However, one thing to keep in mind is that to be able to use crit damage, you have to be able to crit to be able to use attack, you'll be able to use attack under any circumstance. So maybe that's the balancing lever over there. Now, moving on, time for us to take a look at the Forte Circuit. And this is where things are going to get a little bit spicy for this unit over here. Verdant Edge. So, Qiuyuan basically has this resource. It's called Swordster's Soliloquy. And that is his Forte Circuit. And whenever he reaches 200 points, his basic attack is replaced with Thus Spoke the Blade Inkwash. And that's going to deal arrow damage. It's actually going to change his attack chain pretty significantly. He's also going to gain access to, at 400 points, a special buff called Bamboo Shade. And you'll notice, right, this is also going to give a nice Echo skill damage bonus to the team. Qiuyuan also deals Echo skill damage on his own. It's actually on his Liberation, but you won't see that until we get to the detailed overview. And then, when that Swordster's Soliloquy, that Forte Circuit is filled, he's going to enter the Ink Splash of Mind state. And that's going to replace his heavy attack with Thus Spoke the Blade. And in this state, he's going to hold the normal attack, consume that Forte Circuit to perform a series of heavy attacks that deal arrow damage and are also considered heavy attack damage. This also gives a shit ton of Concerto, and it's one of the reasons for why his rotation time can be so short. Next up, some details regarding Swordster's Soliloquy and how you can max it out. 600 points, we talked about that before. He's also going to be able to use it when performing a basic attack stage 3. Whenever he uses that Inkwash attack chain that's available over here once he reaches 200, whenever he uses a dodge counter, and of course his intro skill. What you'll notice is that his intro skill will actually give him a lot of this Swordster's Soliloquy. And so oftentimes you don't actually end up using his regular basic attacks that much. This Forte Circuit can't be obtained when you're already maxed out, so you can't really like chain together those heavy attacks, and it'll also be completely dissipated. It'll just disappear when this Ink Splash Mind state that lasts for 8 seconds fully ends. So that's an explanation of the Forte Circuit. This is what some of the attacks look like. You can see over here, very, very, very cool animations, very, very, very stylish, massive amounts of aura farming, and well, that's just how it breaks down. Now, we got the intro skill. This is going to deal arrow damage, and within a certain period of time after casting this skill, you're going to press the normal attack to perform basic attack, Thus Spoke the Blade Inkwash, stage 3. And so this is just another way for him to quickly build up more and more of those Soliloquy stacks and get to, you know, those enhanced Forte heavy attacks a lot faster. Next, we're going to have his outro skill. You're going to notice that his kit description is kind of short. His outro skill is going to deal arrow damage and then grant a 50% echo skill damage amplification to the incoming resonator, which lasts for 14 seconds or until the resonator is switched out. And this is where stuff gets a little bit complicated, because a lot of people might think, oh yeah, Qiuyuan, he buffs echo skill damage and all of that. He should be a great teammate for Forlova. I think he'll be okay. The main reason why is because Forlova's majority echo skill damage actually occurs off field, and Qiuyuan's buffs only actually trigger and are active while they're on the field. And so when Forlova does use her Liberation, right, and then switches over to Hecate and stuff like that, you're going to have a bit of an issue. Because this buff over here that gives the echo skill damage bonus, they've also got to be active as well. So Forlova doesn't actually benefit as much from this guy's buffs as you might expect. So I don't really think he's going to be a replacement for like a Rosia or something like that in her teams. However, there is another character that's clearly going to benefit a lot, and that's going to be Galbrina, because this unit doesn't have an echo skill damage buffer. There is no other echo skill damage buffer in the game, and a majority of her actual damage is echo skill damage. And there's a reason why a lot of people have felt a little bit disappointed in this character's success, a little bit disappointed in this character's viability, primarily due to the fact that, well, guys, she doesn't have her best in slot buffer, and there aren't really many other alternatives other than placing her in the mono fusion team, which at that point you're kind of just like, okay, like I get basically this is like 1% better than using a Chang Li, and at that point not really that great of a pull if you already have the rest of the other characters. It also requires you to have Brandon Lupa in the first place, but her with Qiuyuan, reading those buffs and knowing right how much echo skill damage she does, he's going to be a great buffer for her. Now let's start moving on, take a look at the combat guide, and then we'll take a look at some of the more in-depth breakdowns of these abilities, just to see whether or not we have seen some actual buffs, some actual changes. So, when casting an echo skill, Qiuyuan gains Flowing Panacea, which is consumed to increase the attack the next time Swordster's Soliloquy is obtained. That's actually one of his inherent skills. They talked about all of this before we even got to see what it does. If there are no targets nearby, holding... Okay, blah, blah, blah. Qiuyuan restores Sorcerer's Soliloquy through basic attack stage 3 and dodge counter. When Sorcerer's Soliloquy reaches 200, 400, 600, he unlocks the Thus Spoke the Blade Ink Wash, Bamboo Shade, and Ink Splash of Mind, respectively. And, okay, this is the worst combat guide I think Kuro Games has ever written. I'm going to be honest over here. This is literally just his Forte Circuit with less information. And then this is just his skill, the hold version. And then this is an inherent skill that they didn't even talk about yet. It's later down here. So I would just, if you're reading this yourself or you're covering this part, maybe just skip this part of the video. This is complete dog shit. This is actually the worst combat guide I've seen for a character in this game ever. So now let's go ahead and actually read the more detailed breakdowns of all of these attacks. And you can see over here, it's a little bit more complex. So when it comes to Qiuyuan's basic attack, it's going to be a 3-hit attack chain, and they're all going to deal arrow damage. They're not going to deal heavy attack damage. They're just going to deal basic. His heavy attack, however, is going to consume stamina to attack the target. It's going to deal arrow damage, and if you press the normal attack button within a certain period of time after casting the skill, you'll actually be able to skip ahead into Ink Wash Stage 4. And that's going to be a pretty good attack to be able to use even in his default state without having the Sorcerer's Soliloquy maxed. He's going to have a mid-air attack as well that's going to consume stamina to perform a plunging attack. Everyone knows about that. And then he's also going to have a dodge counter. That's a little special. Pressing the normal attack button right after a successful dodge attacks the target, and that's going to actually deal heavy attack damage. His dodge counter is a special typing. And moments after a basic attack or heavy attack, Qiuyuan's going to become immune to the next instance of damage he takes and then immediately cast a dodge counter upon being attacked. This is something that you can do for like fun to kind of like aura farm, but in actuality, if an enemy's about to attack, you can just dodge and follow up with a dodge counter anyways. So this is kind of just like a cool thing to have in his kit, but functionally in practice, there's no need to ever actually use it, because in any situation when you're using this, you can just dodge and then use a normal attack, and or just use a normal dodge counter anyways. So yeah, we'll show an example of what it looks like in gameplay, courtesy of my moderator, who's actually been doing some recording for this on the side. So it's that. You'll notice, right? When Qiuyuan's foot, or when Qiuyuan's sword is like on the ground after an attack, he's basically like sensing the vibrations of like the enemy through the ground. And if during this animation, after an attack chain, he gets hit by an enemy, he automatically triggers a dodge counter. However, this is what I mean. You'll notice how long you actually have to wait here. That's kind of a long time. When in reality, you could just keep attacking, then proceed to just dodge and then dodge counter normally. So that's kind of like why I'm saying this is more of like an aura farming thing and not necessarily like something that's going to be super practical, or like super incredibly absurdly useful in gameplay. Just something to keep in mind. Now let's move on a little bit more. Now we're going to have resonant skill through the groves. Press the resonant skill button to dash forward a distance, deal arrow damage, and that's going to be considered as echo skill damage. And if resonant skill is cast upon being attacked by an enemy target, Qiuyuan becomes immune to this one instance of damage and stagnates nearby enemies while gaining immunity interruption during this resonant skill. So that basically means that this can be a bit of a counter. And this is what's going to be actually more impactful, right? Because you can use this essentially during an enemy's attack to completely negate it, essentially, CC them a little bit, and then also be able to continue the rest of your combo. So this instance of like damage immunity is typically going to be a lot more useful than the one that you're seeing over here, because it actually has a practical use case and isn't just, you know, a rehashing of an ability you're going to use anyways. And I think we got a gameplay demonstration of that as well over here. Let's just see. I think should be round. That's what it looks like. Yep. Nothing too crazy, but you can see how in the middle of a combat, how in the middle of a fight, specifically against maybe like an aggressive boss, being able to be damage immune for that one instance of damage could be pretty helpful. Maybe think about holograms or something like that. A lot of use cases for that one. That one was a miss, but good enough. Was it really a miss? Did you even take damage? No, I mean, I don't think you took damage from it. There you go. Yeah, he starts looking like the Incredible Hulk for a second there. So yeah, I guess that's what the real proper one looks like. Now, moving on, we've already covered this one, but this is essentially his hold version, and that's the one that allows him to start bamboo dashing across the trees, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Get all of that stuff going. Nothing too crazy with this one. We've already seen the gameplay demos of that. You just consume your stamina, do all of that good stuff. His Resonance Liberation Sundering Strike, this is where the additional information becomes really, really, really handy. Deal arrow damage to targets within range, and that's going to be considered Echo skill damage. And this is the part of the kit that really starts, I think, painting a clearer picture of how Qiuyuan is going to work. Qiuyuan's a character that deals a split of damage between Echo skill damage and heavy attack damage. And I feel like that isn't necessarily clarified enough in the simplified version of his kit. And the thing is that when it comes to that simplified version of his kit, things like these buffs over here, they don't seem like they're benefiting him as much, right? Like the Bamboo Shade's 30% Echo skill damage bonus. But they actually do benefit him a lot because he has so many abilities in here, like his Resonance skill as well as his Resonance Liberation, that actually scale with the ability. So that's something to keep in mind. It's also going to have that same exact crit damage buff that we just talked about before, shown over here. His Forte Circuit, on the other hand, I don't really necessarily think it has any other real crazy differences other than just clarifying the number of attacks further. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Ink Wash looks like. When Qiuyuan reaches 200 points of Swordster's Soliloquy, his basic attack is replaced with Thus Spoke the Blade Ink Wash, which chains together up to 4 consecutive strikes, dealing arrow damage, and that's also considered to be, and this is the important part, those enhanced basic attacks from his Forte Circuit, they're all considered as heavy attack damage. And so this is where, a lot of his kit starts coming together. You're never actually meant to be using his regular baseline basic attacks, because all you need is 1/3 of his Forte Circuit, 200 out of his 600 points to start unlocking the basic attacks that are converted to heavy attack damage. And you would much prefer that over the other stuff that you have available. Now, let's go ahead. We've already taken a look at Sorcerer's Soliloquy. This is the one where when you're at 2/3 of your Forte Circuit, or 400 out of 600, you gain the Echo skill damage bonus of 30%. That's just where it is over here. When it comes to the Ink Splash State of Mind, this is where we're going to look at some of the additional information. So, we've already seen the part where you hold the normal attack button to trigger the 3-hit attack chain. Nothing too much to really add over here. However, the important note is that each of these 3 attacks is considered as performing an Echo skill. And this is the thing, ladies and gentlemen. There aren't a lot of abilities in the game, or even characters in the game, that are able to trigger Echo skills. There are currently 3 characters in the game, before Qiuyuan, whose attacks are considered casting Echo skills. You have Frolova, who has one on her big, chorus attack, the heavy attack after she gets the 6 chords. That's one of them. Then you have Cantarella, who has like 4 of them, I think 3 of them built into her kit, 4 counting her own Echo skill. And then you have Rosia, who has 1. Qiuyuan is going to be the other character in the game who's going to be able to cast 4 Echo skills on their own. And so that means, well, it's going to feel really good for Galbraina, because Galbraina has that, I personally really don't like the mechanic, but she has that mechanic called Afterflame, where every time a teammate casts an Echo skill, she gains points of Afterflame, and Afterflame boosts her damage by up to 60% depending on how many stacks of Afterflame you have. And, well, you can max it out with Cantarella currently, but Cantarella doesn't buff Galbraina in any meaningful way, while Qiuyuan is going to buff her a lot on the Echo skill damage side, and then also provide the ability to max out her Afterflame very easily for more of these stacks. So that's something to keep in mind. This also means that Qiuyuan, despite his buffs only working on active characters, he can still be a good battery for Frolova, because, well, that's going to be a lot more Hecate attacks that are coming out because you're casting more Echo skills naturally. So that's just some of the additional synergies that are going to be listed out here because of how this coding works. They're considered Echo skills. The next thing is that, of course, right, on top of all of that, we've got to talk about, well, how a Sonata set is going to work. And if you just go over here, you take a look at your good old, where are we at for Law of Harmony, you'll notice to activate Law of Harmony, you got to be able to cast multiple Echo skills. Law of Harmony also gives you a heavy attack damage bonus after you cast an Echo skill. Then you get up to 16% Echo skill damage as well to the entire team. So you can see over here, yeah, basically his set is entirely based off of you performing this 3-hit attack chain. Thus spoke the blade from Ink Splash in mind. That's how you're basically gonna activate his entire Sonata set. So for some more clarification on how you're actually gonna obtain the Sorcerer's Soliloquy to be able to unlock all these different stages, it's kind of crazy how it works. So he's going to gain 100 points from simply performing the basic attack stage 3 in his default chain. He's going to gain 100 points whenever he performs any stage of Thus Spoke the Blade Ink Wash. So this one's way faster. He's going to gain 100 points whenever he uses a dodge counter, and then gain 400 points immediately upon performing an intro skill. So that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. You'll basically have access to his full buffing, his Ink Wash attack chain, and pretty much the Ink Splash State of Mind really fast after using an intro skill, because you're already going to be at 2/3 filled, 400 out of his 600 points. So you're beginning to see how he has a fast rotation time, and you're probably also beginning to see how you might be able to extend his rotation further, maybe cast multiple abilities, multiple Forte attacks, with how fast he can get that first one off. So that's just some other stuff to keep in mind. When it comes to his intro skill, like we talked about before, that is just going to deal heavy attack damage as arrow damage, but then also allow him to advance into the 3rd and 4th stages of his Ink Wash attacks. And you know what that means. You'll be able to immediately start casting those big enhanced Thus Spoke the Blade heavy attacks over there too. Now, moving forward, for the outro skill, it's the only additional clarification we got over here is that it's going to deal 100% of Qiuyuan's attack. This is basically a carbon copy of Yuno's thing. Nothing too crazy to worry about. And then when it comes to his inherent skills, this is where stuff's going to get a little bit interesting. Qiuyuan obtains Quietude Within for 10 seconds upon entering the Ink Splash of Mind state. This effect can be triggered once every 22 seconds. Heavy attack, Thus Spoke the Blade, all the attacks in there are going to deal 50% more damage. And they'll additionally restore 30 points of Concerto energy on hit. So think about it this way, guys. This is one of the most important inherent skills in the game. It's going to increase his damage a lot, and it's also going to increase his rotation time. Or, sorry, not increase. It's going to drastically shorten his rotation time by a massive amount, too. And then this is where the second inherent skill that was in the combat guide shows up. When casting Echo skill, Qiuyuan's Bamboo Flask absorbs the overflowing energy and brews it into flowing panacea. And the next time Sorcerer's Soliloquy is obtained, he gains a 10% attack increase for 20 seconds. This is like super complicated, I'm not gonna lie. It's just basically like, it's a 10% attack buff every time you use an Echo skill, essentially. But it's also like, he casts so many Echo skills, the buff lasts for so long, and the buff isn't even like that big. I don't think that there's anything too crazy with this one. Just think of it as like having an additional substat on the build, which is cool considering that some inherent skills are, you know, almost like completely useless in combat, like Lupa just running faster. So yeah, that's going to be the initial view of the kit. However, what I wanted to do now was actually just look and see, based off of the prior content that we've done regarding Qiuyuan and his pre-release kit, well, have there been any big changes? Have there been any big updates? And what I can confidently say is, oh, hello, Saint from the past. You're looking a little bit clean, brother, man. I don't think there's anything different at all. I've been keeping all the stuff that we covered in mind as we were going through that breakdown, you know, using some of the pre-release materials that were available during the quest. And while we don't have access to things like motion values, I think it's clear that the entire structure of his kit is pretty much entirely the same to what we saw before. However, one thing that we aren't seeing right now are those motion values. So, and unfortunately, this is how it's got to be, there is a chance that these motion values that we've seen over here, that we've seen in this breakdown, and there's also a chance that his sequence nodes that we also saw as well, those are the things that potentially got updated. Because one of the big issues that I personally had with Qiuyuan and how he worked in that gameplay test was the fact that his sequence nodes were basically adding entirely new abilities to his kit. His sequence node over here, S3, essentially makes him a little bit like Camellia, where he can consume his Forte Circuit to essentially extend his rotation time, deal way more damage on field, but of course, right, play as more of like a main DPS as opposed to like the sub DPS support that he is right now. And my take has always been, why not just add this baseline capability into his kit in the first place, as opposed to adding a completely new ability? Why not just add this ability to extend his rotation, make him a bit more of a main DPS, but then make it weaker in his regular kit and then just buff it a lot in S3. Because right now, you just don't even have access to this. And I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty damn cool how this stuff actually works. So yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate that I think Kuro has decided to take like this path with the initial reveal that they had. Maybe Qiuyuan is like perfectly viable, feels great as a main DPS at S0 anyways, and this is absolutely unnecessary, but we'll just have to see after a little bit more time. And after, of course, you know, being able to experiment with this gameplay ourselves. But yeah, that's going to be our overview for now. That's going to be some of the concerns that we have. I know there were probably some questions that you wanted to get answered, but unfortunately, Kuro is, I'm just going to be honest, this has been one of the most secretive character releases in the history of the game. And, well, I think a lot of people are waiting with bated breath to see what the final results of his viability are going to be. And don't worry, we'll be there to fully test out every single possibility when it comes to this unit. So, yeah. Let me know what you all thought, ladies and gentlemen. Peace out.